Now that we're into part 2, we can take a few more minutes to go over a few details about tough nuts, and we can also talk a little bit more in detail about the repair on a Ford manifold or any other piece on the vehicle. The first thing is that tough nuts come with barrels on them. And the reason for that is those are threaded all the way, and we can go inside, grab a hold of the threads on the stud that's left, and go ahead and make the repair. We can make a repair with as little as 2 threads left. So if you've broken it off, you still have a couple threads, could you reach in and grab a hold of those threads and make it work? Sure could. What I want you to, I prefer that you had as many threads as possible. So we're trying to change the industry a little bit for you so that they understand that if you're going to make this repair, let's plan on the repair before we attack it rather than just have it attack us. How would it attack us? They break off flush, now we're drilling and tapping. Let's start with this. First of all, this repair was designed by people that actually do the work each and every day, just as all the rest of our tools are, just as all the tough nuts were designed. How are they designed? Well, let's go over a couple things first. First thing is the head was made very thick, so even a crescent wrench would fit on it. Second of all, they wanted them 1/2 inch and 5/8. Keep it simple. It's also 13 mil and 17 mil. Doesn't matter what kind of wrench set you have. They wanted to make sure that there was no way that these threads that we're working with could get distorted or ruined while they were working with a tough nut. How do we do that? Well, we asked the machinist, how does this work? They'll stretch after 60 foot-pounds, probably closer to 65 or 70 foot-pounds. You'll get some distortion, and the more you tighten them up, the more distortion you're going to get. Well, we don't want to have that because this is our repair and this is what we have to work with. So we talked to them and they said, well, we'll set the barrel up so that it breaks off at 50 foot-pounds so that you can't over-torque it even if you happen to put it in an air gun and you slam it on there. The barrel will break off, you just spin the barrel back off and you can still make the repair the right way with a tough nut. Thought, wow, that is really, really neat. What other details could we have? Well, they suggested that because it would be easy for you, we should color code these so you know what pitch thread's inside, so we did that as well. For example, this is a 125 metric pitch and it's gold. We have them if they're black. If they're black, they're a 1.5 pitch. If they're red, they're a 1.0 pitch. If they're silver, they're American course, and so on. They wanted to keep every part of this as simple as they could. Of course, we cut it off with a torch, one of our favorite tools. After we cut it off with a torch, again, as we talked about earlier, we want to get a little bit of slag off. So we want to get that slag off. One of my guys one time, he was trying to deburr it before he got the slag off, and he was like, how come this won't deburr? Well, because slag is very hard. So you want to get that off, then you use your deburring tool to deburr this. The biggest thing about the deburring tool, again, we couldn't find a tool that was simple and easy to use. We called a lot of companies. Now, we sell this for under $29. But we called a lot of companies and had them send them to us in wholesale. It was $40, $50, $60, $70. And every one of them wanted to take the thread and roll it into the next thread, which means now you got to run a thread chaser. Didn't want to go through all that. So we had this designed by our machinist, and he made it so that it would flake the material, brought it back, the guys tried it, they loved it. So we're working on a bigger one, but right now this goes up to, like I said, 3/8. Pretty much you can do a wheel stud with it because it is set up to wobble, and it will work for you. We also make a coil pack nut. Well, a lot of times when you're taking coil packs on the new vehicles out to do a tune-up, you have to take that bolt out. The bolt is in unlike metals. What happens? It breaks off. What do we do now? You take one of these tough nuts, we made 2 different types, and you put them in and you hand tighten them, and they fit right in the coil pack without having to do any extra work. You hand tighten them, hold your coil pack in place, you're good to go. For example, in an engine compartment, especially like let's take the Ford or a Chevy or whatever, you've got steel studs going into aluminum. If you go to take these out and you break them off, even if you've done 100 of them, what are you going to do now? You're going to drill and tap. Got a water jacket behind here. We could set up a jig, except we're down in the engine compartment, very awkward place to work anyway, and we could take these out, which can take 8, 9, 10 hours. When we get to this point where you're going to take them out, if you're one of the guys that takes them out, we're making our repair. We're ready to put this vehicle back together. The fellas that do this work want to make money. They want to make money because they want to speed. They want to be able to work on somebody else's car in a few minutes, that's fine, they'll be able to get this done. The nice part about it is once this work is done, and it's all back together, what happens now? Well, get a new set of tough nuts. If you ever had to do this work again, 15 minutes. And you could do it in your driveway with the least amount of tools, and you'd be able to do this almost by hand. It would take no time at all to do it. Another thing that I saw on the internet, there was a gentleman that's not far from our video right here, the original video. You'll see that he had a 3-point flange with 3 studs sticking out with these ears on it. The problem is if these ears ever get broken off while you're heating up and trying to extract these studs, you got to throw this away. And then if you have to throw this away, you may have to take off the other part. You can get into more nuts and bolts broken than you ever want to deal with. I'd rather be back here putting this back together while they're still working on that. And when you look at the picture of him doing that, he was doing it with wax, which was probably a great idea, but if he had had Tough Nuts, our product, he'd already been putting it back together without ever extracting those studs. This manifold has some that have rotted off. Now on GMs this happens a lot. They get pencil thin, and anybody that's ever worked on a GM engine understands that. Well, how are we going to repair that? It's a very difficult repair. Well, we made a weldable for that. We're going to do a video just on the weldable, but you put your weldable on, and you can put 3/8 strutted rod in there, and you can still make your repair and put your Y pipe back up or whatever you may have to do. Tough Nuts are so versatile that we also use it here in a starter situation where you have the positive cable coming down to the solenoid. The ends sometimes get corroded or rot off, especially in the Northeast. When they do, they almost weld themselves between 2 nuts. And anybody that's ever worked on one of these knows when you go to take that nut off to get that off to make the repair, it's going to break. We say use a stud extender. What's a stud extender? Looks like this. It's a much smaller head, again it's 1/2 inch, with a barrel on it so that you can screw that down, get it onto your solenoid. Instead of taking those nuts off, just put this on. Go ahead and make your wire repair, solder it into the wire, whatever you have to do, get ready to make your repair. Once you get your repair made, you come down here, you take your bolts, you take a washer, you put it in, put your new piece on, tighten it down, the repair is made, you're all done, good to go. Trying to keep everything as simple as possible. This repair can save you a couple $100, and this repair can also take you possibly 5 or 10 minutes instead of maybe an hour or 2 of taking bolts out and getting a starter out that really doesn't need to be replaced except for this. We've done it on a Ford diesel, and we thought that would be tough. It's lasted for over 2 years at this point and working very well. Let's go on to number 3.